Hello, everyone. Welcome to join us in making cute simulation cats. Today, we will make 6 adorable simulation cats together. Considering the difficulty level of the projects, we recommend starting with Cat 2, then Cat 5 for beginners. These 2 videos are especially suitable for beginners. We will explain the entire making process in detail. Before we start, let's take out our handle. 1 medium needle, 1 fine needle. What we are teaching everyone to make our small dolls. So we are providing these 2 types of needles. The medium needle is slightly longer than the fine needle. The tip of the medium needle is also slightly thicker than the fine needle. Both types of needle tips will have many small barbs. During the felting process, the barbs move the wool, causing the wool to interlock. To achieve the felting effect, the medium needle felts faster and is used for shaping in the early and mid stages. The felting speed with fine needles is relatively slow, used for later light felting, to make the surface of the doll smooth and even. When making larger or even larger works, the following will be used: coarse needle, 3-pronged needle, 7-pronged needle. These types of needles have a particularly fast felting speed, so they are used for making large works. The medium and fine needles provided for everyone make it easier to create small dolls. First time using a felting needle, we need to take a needle out of the needle holder. New needles are coated with anti-rust oil to prevent the felting needle from rusting. Before we use it, you can wipe off the rust foil on the surface with a paper towel. The correct way to clean the needle is to gently wipe along the direction of the needle. After cleaning, it can be used together with the handle. When cleaning the needle, remember not to wipe back and forth. This can easily lead to the needle accidentally piercing your finger, causing injury. If the needle is not used for a long time, to avoid rusting, you can apply rust-proof foil or cooking oil to the surface. After oiling, store it in a needle case. Using the needle. When felting wool, the needle needs to be kept vertical to the wool being felted. Insert the wool in the direction of the needle tip. When pulling the needle out, it needs to be pulled out in the opposite direction of where it was inserted. Then repeat. Continuously repeat. This will allow the wool to felt. When felting wool, make sure to apply force in the direction of the needle. Do not press the needle. Pressing the needle can easily lead to breakage. Also, do not lift the needle upwards after inserting it into the wool. This can also cause the needle to break. Then take out our handle. Pull out the wooden plug inside the handle. You can see one end is relatively large. One end is relatively small. Take the end of the needle with the hook and fit it into the groove of the smaller end. Then put our needle back into the handle. It can't be loose like this. Push it in tightly with some force. This way it won't loosen up. Next, we need to prepare the workbench. To better demonstrate for everyone, the video uses a white foam pad. Before starting, you can put on finger cots. The shorter one is worn on our thumb. The longer one is worn on our index finger. Like this. For beginners, it is very necessary to wear finger cots to prevent our needle from injuring our hands while felting. Once you become skilled, you can take off the finger cots to operate. In the instructional video to help everyone see better, the demonstrator did not wear finger cots. For better distinction in the instructional video, We use a wooden handle to represent the fine needle, and a blue handle to represent the medium needle. In reality, you may receive two wooden handles. You can use one wooden handle to install the fine needle and one wooden handle to install the medium needle. For convenience of distinction, you can make marks on the wooden handle. There are two types of handles, wooden and plastic. The functions of both types are the same, it's just the material that is different. Today, let's learn how to make a cute Garfield cat. Before we start making it, let's get to know Garfield. Take a look at the shape of Garfield on the 1-to-1 blueprint. First, we need to create the basic shape of the head. Because it needs to connect to the neck at the back. So let's temporarily simplify the head into a slightly flattened spherical shape at the back of the head. Here is Garfield's front face as shown in the picture. Making the basic shape of the head, take out the white wool. First, try wrapping the wool a bit. Compare with the 1-to-1 blueprint to confirm the amount of wool needed. The comparison with the blueprint shows it's a bit small. You can wrap a little more wool. Since we are not wrapping it very tightly right now, you can make it slightly larger than the blueprint. This amount is appropriate. We pinch here, at the end. Loosen. At this position, keep your hands a little further apart. If your hands are close together, it's hard to pull the wool apart. Pull hard to remove the excess wool. Let's check if the remaining amount of wool is appropriate. The amount is still a little too much. We can pull a little wool from this side. Now the wool is separated nicely. Take out the white wool that was just separated. Start wrapping the wool. If you just casually loosely wrap the wool like this, the middle will be soft. When we are shaping with the medium needle, it takes more time to poke the wool tightly. The correct way to wrap the wool. Start wrapping from the flat end of the wool. Pinch the wool with one hand and roll it inward. Press down with the other hand. Roll inward and hold it down. Repeat this continuously. Both hands need to apply pressure to wrap the wool tightly. This hand needs to press down firmly. At the end, squeeze firmly. This way, the wool will be wrapped well. Next, we will start felting. Before we start felting, everyone needs to place a gray felting mat underneath for the felting process. This makes it easier to insert the needle while preventing the felting needle from breaking. Here, for the sake of teaching and viewing, I will demonstrate using a large white foam pad. Using the medium needle, deeply stab the end position to secure it. If you find any stray fibers in the wool, you can pick them out. First, secure a circle around the outer edge. Deeply poke until the wool doesn't come apart. Now both sides are in a bulging state. We will stand the wool up. Felt the bulging parts from both sides towards the center. When everyone starts felting at the very beginning, you can slow down the speed of the needle appropriately to avoid poking your other hand. The video has been edited and sped up. The actual making process takes a bit longer, so please be patient while felting. When felting, you need to poke deeply while rotating. Shape the wool into a ball that is slightly flattened at the back. If you poke in the same spot for too long, it can easily distort the shape. Felting while rotating can help us shape faster. Check the softness and hardness. Currently, it feels quite soft in the middle. We need to continue using the medium needle to felt it tighter. While tightening, we should also keep adjusting the shape. For example, this area is too protruding right now. Let's felt this area to felt its shape inward. Shape the whole piece into a ball. Now, let's check the firmness again. It feels much firmer in the middle now. The surface still feels quite soft. When using the medium needle, there is a certain resistance. At this point, we can switch to a fine needle to continue felting. A fine needle can further refine and increase the density. While we are tightening, we should constantly compare with the blueprint. Make slight adjustments to the basic shape. Right now, the entire head looks a bit square. We need to felt the square areas to make them a bit rounder. Check the density. Now when you squeeze it, the middle part is already quite dense. You need to squeeze it quite hard on the surface, there should be a slight rebound feeling. This level of density is acceptable. Everyone, please note that we don't need to felt our basic shape too tightly. If it's too tight and hard, it will be inconvenient to make adjustments later. Let's compare the size of the blueprint. This size is just right. If when comparing the blueprint, you feel that the basic shape is a bit small, we can take out some white wool and spread it out. Wrap it around the basic shape. Use the fine needle to poke deeply and secure it, enlarging the basic shape by one circle. If when comparing the blueprint, you found that the basic shape is a little too big, we can use scissors to trim the basic shape a little smaller. The basic shape of a head is complete. Next, let's observe the 1-to-1 blueprint. From the side, Garfield's face has a certain curvature. For everyone's convenience in viewing, we will use a physical object for observation. Because Garfield's head is slightly tilted upwards, its nose and mouth have a prominent curve. The nose is the highest point of the face, then gradually slopes down. So we need to add a protruding nose shape on top of the basic head shape. Take an appropriate amount of white wool and tear it apart. When tearing, be careful to slightly separate your fingers. If your hands are too close, it will be hard to tear. Don't tear in the same direction all the time. Tearing in the same direction will create a stronger fiber feel. We can rotate it like this to tear the wool apart. Tear the longer fibers around to shorten them. After tearing, take out the amount of wool you need. Fold it into a triangular shape. Fix it to the lower position of the head's basic shape as the base for the nose and mouth. Use a fine needle to poke it in deeply to secure it. Poke it tightly. Let's check the curvature from the side. This curvature is basically suitable. The basic shape of the nose and mouth is complete. Observe the one-to-one blueprint. Garfield is in a lying position. Now, let's create the basic shape of the body. We can summarize the basic shape of the body as a cylinder. Compare with the blueprint to confirm the amount of wool for the body shape. Wrap the wool tightly using the same method. Secure it by poking deeply with the medium needle. Rotate and poke to form a cylinder. Observe the physical form of Garfield. Because it is in a lying position, the butt is slightly raised. The head is slightly lifted. So in the middle of the body, there is a downward curve like this. We need to poke a slight dent in the middle part of the cylindrical shape. To create a concave state in the back. Use the medium needle to poke deeply and create a slight indentation in the middle. When the softness and hardness are just right, and the medium needle feels a bit resistant, switch to the fine needle to further refine and increase firmness. The basic body shape is complete. Connect the head's basic shape to the body. Note that this is Garfield's nose, facing forward. Confirm the position of the head and use a fine needle to deeply stab the head to secure it to the body. Let's observe the curvature of Garfield's neck. Because Garfield's head is slightly tilted up like this, so its neck has a prominent curve. We need to add more wool at the connection between the head's basic shape and the body's basic shape and felt a neck curve. Take out the white wool, tear it apart, and fold it. Add the torn wool to the connection between the head and the body. Use the fine needle to felt tightly, adjusting the shape slightly during the process to create the curve of the neck. At the same time, this can make the connection marks disappear, making the connection more natural. Neck completed. Next, let's observe Garfield's shoulders and thighs. This side's buck OCK is slightly raised like this, so this side's thigh needs to be a bit fuller. This side is directly lying down like this, so this side's thigh and shoulder are slightly inward. Therefore, we need to add the basic shapes of the shoulders and thighs on top of the body's basic shape. Pay attention to the sizes on both sides. This side needs to be a little fuller. Fold the torn white wool and add it to the upper part of the body basic shape on both sides, as the shoulders basic shapes. Use the fine needle to felt it tightly. Shoulders basic shapes completed. Use the same method to create the thighs basic shapes. Complete. Observe Garfield's limbs. View from the front. The front legs can be summarized as a thin cylindrical shape, with a more rounded paw shape at the front. Because Garfield is in a lying position, so the hind legs are positioned like this horizontally. You can see from this side, the two front legs are one in front and one behind. From this side you can see that this hind leg is also in a horizontal position. So next, we will create the basic shapes of the limbs. First, felt the basic shapes of the limbs into cylinders. Then, fix them to the corresponding positions on the body. Take out the white wool and tear it apart. Wrap the wool into a cylindrical shape. Fold one end inward, leaving the other end loose for easier connection later. Use the fine needle to rotate and poke it tightly. When making these small objects, everyone can slow down the needle speed appropriately to avoid poking their fingers on the other side. Shape the paw and secure it by poking deeply with a fine needle. One leg is complete. Use the same method to make the other 3 legs. Confirm the positions of the front legs and secure them by poking deeply with a fine needle. Confirm the positions of the back legs and secure them by poking deeply with a fine needle. All 4 legs are connected. Take the torn white wool, lay it on the body, and lightly poke the surface with a fine needle. Poke tightly to make the surface connection marks disappear, making the connection more natural. Complete. Observe Garfield's face. The eyes are positioned in the slightly low center of the face. From the side, you can see that the eyes are slightly recessed. There is a feeling of wrapping around. Now let's take a look at Garfield's mouth. There is prominent flesh on both sides of the mouth. We need to add wool to create the flesh on both sides of the mouth. The middle part is slightly recessed. Next, let's continue making the facial features. Confirm the position of the eyes and use a fine needle to deeply poke out the eye sockets. After poking out the eye sockets, secure the eyes in place. Due to international shipping reasons, please prepare the glue by yourself. Apply glue to the back of the eyes and secure them to the eye sockets. Take some white wool, tear it apart, and add it around the eyes to create the upper and lower eyelids. Use a fine needle to lightly poke and compact it. Repeat the same method for the other eye. Next, felt the area around the mouth. Take white wool, tear it apart, and fold it into small balls. Head to both sides of the mouth and use a fine needle to felt tightly. At the chin position, you can also add some wool and felt it tightly. Note that the chin position should be slightly lower than the flesh around the mouth. The basic facial features are complete. Next, let's observe the patterns on Garfield's body. The patterns require a total of 3 colors of wool to create. First, we need to use chrome yellow wool as the base, avoiding the nose, mouth, and for paws. Then add the medium brown color, randomly applying it to some areas of the body. This will make it look more natural. Finally, we need to use brown wool to create Garfield striped patterns. There are some vertical stripes on the top of the head. There are some horizontal stripes on the face. These patterns are all irregular, but the overall shape is changing according to Garfield's form. So, everyone should pay attention while making it. There's no need to make it too neat. Randomly poking some patterns will make it look more natural. For the facial details, each I have a ring of black eyeliner. Deep pink nose and mouth. Next, let's felt the patterns for Garfield's body together. Take out the chrome yellow wool and tear it apart. Add it to the corresponding positions on the head and body as the base. Use the fine needle to lightly poke the surface to tighten it. When poking the edges, it doesn't need to be too neat. A natural transition is just fine. Then randomly add the torn medium brown wool onto the body. Spread it thinly on the surface and lightly poke with a fine needle. After adding it well, take a strand of brown wool and roll it into a rope shape in your palm. Then add the brown wool to the corresponding position and poke to create striped patterns. Secure it by poking deeply with a fine needle. Pattern addition is complete. Roll the black wool into a rope shape and wrap it around the eyes. Secure it by poking deeply with a fine needle. Once secured, use scissors to trim off the excess black wool. Tear the dark pink wool into pieces and roll it into a small ball. Add it to the basic shape of the nose and secure it with a fine needle by poking deeply. Poke to form a triangular nose tip. Roll the dark pink wool into a rope-shaped poke to create the mouth. Secure it by poking deeply with a fine needle. Use scissors to trim off the excess wool. The mouth is complete. Take a look at the shape of Garfield's ears. The ears are sharp triangular shapes. From the side, the ears have a certain thickness. There is a small part that is white in the middle. Take a look at the position of the ears. Above the eyes. Note that the ears on both sides need to be installed a little more symmetrically. Similarly, this side of ear needs to be installed above the eye. Next, we will make the ears. Take out the medium brown wool and tear it apart. Use the fine needle to poke deeply for shaping. Fold the edge inward to form a triangle. Stand the ear upright on the side and felt it firmly. When felting the side, you can slow down the speed of the needle appropriately to avoid poking your fingers on the other side. Take a small amount of white wool and add it to the inside of the ear. One ear is complete. Use the same method to make the other ear. Confirm the positions of the ears and use a fine needle to poke deeply to secure them. Take a small amount of brown wool, tear it apart, and add it to the connection point on the back of the ears. Use a fine needle to lightly poke the surface to make the connection look more natural. Add a bit more to the back of the head, and use a fine needle to lightly poke the surface to make the pattern look more natural. Roll the brown wool into a rope shape and add it to the surface of the paw as the toe seams. Secure it by poking deeply with a fine needle. Toe seams are complete. Making blended color wool. Take equal amounts of chrome yellow and medium brown wool. Tear the wool into pieces and mix evenly. Similarly, rotate and tear the wool apart. After mixing evenly, shape the wool into a cylinder and felt the tail. You can roll it with both hands to make the cylinder more rounded. Use a fine needle to poke deeply for shaping, creating a long thin tail. With one end tightly felted and the other end left loose for easy connection later. In the middle position, poke a few times deeply to shape the tail into a curved form. Then take some brown wool, roll it into a rope shape, and add it to the tail as a striped pattern. Tail completed. Spread out the loose wool at the tail end. Confirm the position of the tail end. Use a fine needle to poke it deeply to secure it. Connection complete. On both sides of the mouth, use a fine needle to poke some small holes. Apply glue to one end of the fishing line and secure it in the small hole as the cat's whisker. Once everything is secured, use scissors to trim the whiskers a bit. This way, the Garfield cat is all done. See you next time.